What is up, hooligans? Happy freedom. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Hooligans, where we try to make the news suck a little less. We're late. We're late for the press briefing. So we're going to start off with the press briefing. And then we have really quick new Screaming Goat t-shirts that I'm going to show you, hooligans, a little bit later. We're going to show a video from Congress hearing talking about the UFOs and all that stuff. Then we have another video talking about how they're going to handle the information about the UFO stuff. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Hunter Biden. But we're late, and I got it paused so we can see it from the beginning. We're a few minutes late, so we're just going to go ahead and get her started.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Prostitute.
Okay, a couple things at the top. So from day one, President Biden has treated climate change with the urgency it requires. Against the backdrop of extreme heat we've seen across America, tomorrow, President Biden will announce additional actions to protect communities from extreme heat conditions. This includes investments through NOAA to improve weather predictions, as well as grants through the Department of Interior to bring clean, reliable drinking water to communities across the West. At the event, the president is also going to hear from FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell and NOAA Administrator Dr. Rick Spanrod on the steps being taken on how to protect the millions of Americans being impacted by extreme heat across the country. The mayors of Phoenix, Arizona, and San Antonio, Texas, will also be on hand to talk about the impacts of the climate crisis on their communities and the steps they are taking with this administration to protect communities from it. Also today, President Biden announced his intent to nominate former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley as Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. Since day one, the president has fought to strengthen and defend Social Security, which tens of millions of Americans have paid into and depend on for their livelihood. Governor O'Malley is a lifelong public servant who has a proven track record of delivering results for the people he serves, and who has always been a strong proponent of strengthening Social Security. President Biden extends his gratitude to the acting commissioner for her steady leadership of the Social Security Administration during this interim period. Now, I know many people have been following the news in Delaware today and we're going to have a lot of questions. And so here's what I'll say at the top before I turn it over to my colleague, the Admiral. Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and this was a personal matter for him.
Come on, man.
As we have said, the president, the first lady, they love their son, and they support him as he continues to rebuild his life. This case was handled independently, as all of you know, by the Justice Department under the leadership of a prosecutor appointed by the former president, President Trump. So for anything further, as you know, and we've been very consistent from here, I'd refer you to the Department of Justice and to Hunter's representatives, who is his legal team, obviously, who can address any of your questions. With that, I have the Admiral here, Admiral John Kirby, who's going to take any foreign.
Captain Hot Dog Fingers.
Also, give a preview of an important meeting that the president's going to have tomorrow, a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Italy. And with that, Admiral.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I think, as you know, tomorrow President Biden will host Prime Minister Meloni of Italy at the White House here to reaffirm a strong bipartisan relationship and partnership, quite frankly. Bilateral relationship and partnership between our two nations. The President has been looking forward to this visit quite a bit. The United States and Italy are close NATO allies and G7 partners. We're important trade partners, and there are very strong bonds between our two peoples, as the somewhat 18 million Italian Americans, I think, can attest to. As we deal with important global challenges, including Russia's war against Ukraine and the climate crisis, the U.S.-Italy partnership and Italy's strong voice in the EU and within the NATO alliance certainly remain important. Italy hosts approximately 30,000 American service members, Defense Department employees, and of course all their family members across 5 major military bases throughout Italy, which is the second largest permanent presence in Europe, and we're certainly grateful for that. We work closely with the Prime Minister and the government of Italy on Ukraine, as well as a range of other shared interests. Tomorrow's meeting will give both leaders a chance to explore some of those shared interests, including regional challenges, our shared commitment to, as I said, Ukraine, which Italy has been a great partner on, providing both military and economic and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. The leaders will also be able to discuss developments in North Africa, closer transatlantic coordination regarding the People's Republic of China, and we expect that they'll also discuss Italy's upcoming presidency of the G7 in 2024. Now, President Biden has met and spoken with Prime Minister Meloni a number of times since she took office last fall, including in Bali at the G20 summit, in Hiroshima at the G7 summit, certainly as recently as Vilnius at the NATO summit, and they've consulted regularly along the way with other G7 partners, again, across a range of issues. So there's a good, productive relationship here. President Biden is very much looking forward to the discussion, and of course, we'll have a full readout for you when that meeting is over. I'd be remiss if I didn't also just remind that today marks the 75th anniversary of the day that President Truman desegregated the United States military. And it's an opportunity, we ought to take this opportunity to recognize, first of all, what a courageous decision that was for President Truman at the time, but also recognize the equal bravery, the equal sacrifices, and the terrific service of generations since that decision of members of color who deserve to be equally honored for their service to this country in peace and in war. Diversity makes the United States military stronger. In fact, it's one of our greatest strengths. It not only, especially now as an all-volunteer force, helps us better represent the American people that we serve and defend, but it also leads to better decision-making, more unique perspectives at the table, better operational performance. That doesn't mean that we got it all figured out. It doesn't mean that there's not still work to do. There is. It's important that we continue in the spirit of President Truman to break down barriers so that all qualified service members, no matter their race, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, or religious background, are treated with dignity and respect, can reach their full potential in service to this country, and have their contributions valued. So again, today's a great day to look back at the courage of President Truman and the generations of service members of color, but also it's important that we look forward and making sure that we keep that spirit going and that we don't let it flag. That's all I have.
Can we ask about the situation in Niger very quickly right now? Did the Nigerian military storm the presidential palace there to free the President Bazoum, from his security services who are holding him, sir?
Well, look, we have watched this with deep concern, Peter. We certainly condemn any effort to detain or to subvert the functioning of Niger's democratically elected government. And we're still gathering facts here. And that government, as you know, is led by President Bazoum. We specifically urged the elements of the Presidential Guard to release him from detention and to refrain from any violence. We certainly welcome the strong statements and steps taken by the economic community of West African states and the African Union to defend Niger's democracy. And obviously, we're closely monitoring the situation. But it's all unfolding right now, and we're just going to have to stay tuned to it.
The message to Americans that are on the ground there, and how many U.S. citizens outside of the military members do you believe are in Niger?
I don't have an estimate of how many Americans are in Niger or military members, but obviously this is a very tense situation. We would advise all Americans in Niger to be careful about where they are and what they're doing. We just don't know enough about what's going on, so this is a time to put safety first.
Preliminary discussions about evacuations or anything like that?
Nothing like that right now, Peter. It's all just unfolding. We're just watching this very, very closely. We'll have to see how it unfolds. Thank you.
Go ahead, April.
John, two questions, one on Africa, another subject. What is the update and what are you doing as it relates to the grains issue going to Africa out of Ukraine? What's happening now there? Can you give us an update? Because early on in this war, there was a strong concern. President of Ukraine told Greg Meeks, then at the time the head of Foreign Affairs, that he was very concerned about these African nations, these third world nations that have hunger and food instability there. What is
it's a great question, April. And, you know,
It's a great question, April. It's a real great question. Shut up, April.
starting today, I think. And
I can't stand both these people.
What he plans to tell him, but I sure as heck hope that he plans to be honest with African leaders about the effect that his decision to pull out of the grain deal is going to have on African nations. So much of that grain that was getting out of Odessa and Black Sea ports from Ukraine was going to countries that need it most, developing countries across the so-called global south, and of course that includes the African continent. And we've already seen grain and foodstuff prices fluctuate, go up. They've gone down a little bit, gone up, but there's volatility in the market that wasn't there before. So I sure hope Mr. Putin is willing to be honest with African leaders about the effect that this is having or could have on them.
So does that honesty come with a solution as well?
Well, no, and thanks for the reminder. I didn't actually get to your question. The best way for this grain to get to market is through maritime lanes, through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. And obviously, that's not going to happen now, or at least for some time. So we are working with our EU partners. We're working with Ukraine and other European partners to see if there's other ways to get grain to market overland. But that's not as efficient. It's not effective. You can't move as much or as fast via land routes, whether it's truck or rail. But we're working to see what we can do to try to alleviate or increase the flow.
And last question, as you mark the moment about the integration of the military, are you intertwining that with this moment, this racially and politically divisive moment, to show that patriotism is not just one group? The integration of the military shows that many people are patriots.
I sure hope so. I mean, when a soldier fights and bleeds, that blood's red. It doesn't matter what the color of the skin was. And you don't have to look any further than just recent conflicts that this country has fought and see the contributions. I mean, significant contributions, and the cost in blood, American blood, put forth by people of color for this country. In fact, people of color were fighting for this country even before they were given all the rights of citizens. So yes, I think this is an opportunity, it must be an opportunity for us to recognize that bravery isn't divided by race or color, creed. It's not, it doesn't matter who you worship or whether you worship at all. Bravery, skill, the courage that goes along with being a member of the United States military, and that's something that comes from the heart.
He thinks he's giving an award-winning speech right now.
Signing up to do this. They're not being told to do it. So
is he gonna cry?
It's an opportunity for all Americans.
Shed a little tear for us?
That all Americans who have served this country in uniform continue to defend it bravely.
Thank you. John, I'd like to follow up on the grain deal initiative. Can you tell us what are the most efficient ways of delivering, the most efficient alternatives of delivering grain from Ukraine? So you're talking about consistent work with the partners. What exactly are those alternatives?
Well, as I think I said to April, look, the most efficient way is by ship. I mean, it's just the best way to get the maximum amount of grain out on a timely basis. You could use rail, you could use truck routes. You could also look at perhaps other EU ports, but you gotta get it out of Ukraine to be able to use other EU ports. So there's no more efficient way than by maritime traffic. That's just a scientific fact or physical fact. But we are going to continue to work with our partners in Europe to see if there's other overland ways to do it.
If I may, is there an agreement between the U.S. and its allies regarding the location, method, and timing of the F-16 training for Ukrainian pilots?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I was writing myself a note.
Is there a consensus between the U.S. and its allies regarding the location, method, and timing of the F-16 training for the Ukrainian pilots?
So here's what I can tell you. We are pursuing F-16 training for Ukrainian pilots in Romania and Denmark. The dates, the locations, the length of the syllabus, all that's still being worked out. And I can't give you a day on the calendar and say, well, it's going to start in Romania here and it's going to start in Denmark there. I just don't know. We're still working that out, but we know it's going to be in Denmark and Romania, and there could be other sites as well. That's where we're looking at right now. I know that the Brits are also beginning English language training for Ukrainian pilots so that they can actually operate the controls in an F-16. So that's getting started here, I think, soon. But we'll just have to see. We're all taking this with the appropriate sense of urgency, and we want to get them trained as much as we can, or as fast as we can.
Thanks. John, on Niger follow-up, is there any involvement of the administration in some of the regional conversations that are happening right now? I know Benin is sending their president. Is the U.S. involved in those regional discussions at all?
Regional discussions about
Niger.
Niger. I'm not aware of any specific regional discussions on Niger. Again, this is just unfolding.
Okay. And then on the Italian meeting tomorrow, I don't think I've ever heard you guys express an opinion as far as Italy leaving the Belt and Road Initiative, whether you think that's a good idea. You're not supportive of the Belt and Road Initiative and have been trying to create alternatives to it. So do you think it's a good idea for them to leave?
That's certainly for the Italians to speak to. I mean, that's their sovereign decision. I would let them characterize it if, in fact, they're going to leave, and whether they would and on what time frame would really be for them to speak to. So separate and distinct. I don't want to speak for them one way or the other, but it's becoming increasingly obvious that more and more countries around the world are seeing the risks and, quite frankly, the lack of reward for economic partnerships with China in that regard. And it goes also to Africa as well. So, again, these are decisions that these countries have to make. And you said I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that we're pursuing alternatives or something. I mean, we've created an alternative, the PGII that the president announced at the G7 last year, the Partnership for Global Investment and Infrastructure, just to lay out the acronym there. I mean, that is a good alternative, and it is getting some traction. And so we're going to continue to invest in that and continue to encourage our partners to as well.
Thanks. John, on the situation in Niger, is what we're witnessing right now a coup or an attempted coup? And is the U.S. taking any protective measures at the embassy or in terms of movement of the U.S. troops who are based there?
We're not putting a title on it right now, Jeremy. We're watching this unfold in near real time, just like you are. It's not entirely clear exactly what's going on. We've just got these reports that the president's being detained, and of course we urge for his speedy release. So we'll just kind of have to watch and see where this goes.
And then on this unidentified aerial phenomenon hearing that's happening on Capitol Hill, David Grush, who sat on a U.S. Air Force panel on UAPs, he says that he was informed of a UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program based on interviewing 40 witnesses over 4 years. Does such a program exist, and do you believe that the American people deserve to know if it does?
I have no information on that to provide for you today, one way or the other. I would just say what I said last week when I got asked about this. We obviously take the issue of unidentified aerial phenomenon seriously. There's a whole office at the Pentagon that has stood up to analyze the data, collect reports, collate those reports, and forward them up appropriately. And that's, I think, testament to the fact that we know that in some cases, these phenomena have impacted military training, have then impacted military readiness.
But this hearing today does seem to have brought this issue to kind of a new level of public consciousness. And so I wonder if the president believes that these claims warrant further investigation. Do you guys see some of these claims and allegations as credible?
If the president didn't believe that the sightings by pilots were serious enough to be considered, he wouldn't have wanted the Pentagon to stand up an office to look at this, to analyze the data, to collect reports, to provide a system by which we can collate the information and better figure out what we've got here. But that work's ongoing. So if your question is, do we think we need to be transparent with the American people? Of course we need to be as transparent as we can be. But the truth is, Jeremy, we don't have hard and fast answers on these things. We are trying to get smarter on it.
Sebastian.
Thank you. Again, on Prime Minister Meloni, on the Belt and Road, is this something that the President will bring up with the Prime Minister, at least? whatever his position, the Belt and Road issue?
I think I'll just leave it as I did my readout. They certainly will talk about shared concerns and perspectives and challenges with respect to the PRC. But in terms of specific agenda items, I don't have anything beyond that.
And on the Prime Minister herself, to what extent is President Biden uncomfortable with her being a far-right politician, and she opposes, or her party opposes a bunch of things that the president fights for? And of course, in Europe generally, it's got there are dark roots to that whole movement.
The president has enjoyed working with her, and certainly on issues of foreign policy, there's been a lot of overlapping and mutually reinforcing approaches that were taken with Italy. Italy is a NATO ally, and they are a very competent NATO ally. And they've been a tremendous supporter of Ukraine. They're hosting something like 170,000 Ukrainians on Italian soil, just taking care of these folks while this war rages on, and they have provided millions of dollars of security assistance, humanitarian assistance, economic assistance. I mean, there's, just in my opening statement, you can see there's an awful lot of things to talk about with the Prime Minister. The President's looking forward to that. And again, there's been a lot of alignment on a lot of key foreign policy issues.
So on the domestic issues, internal Italian issues, he just needs those, sets them aside.
The Italian people get to decide who their government is. It's a democracy, and the President respects that. And he also respects the work that he's been able to do with the Prime Minister, again, on a range of issues. But that's what they're going to talk about.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. So back to Jeremy's questioning. Does the United States believe that there may be life outside of Earth?
I don't have a position on that one way or the other to speak to today. What we believe is that there are unexplained aerial phenomena that have been cited and reported by pilots, Navy and Air Force, that these phenomena have, in some cases, had an impact on our training ranges, on our pilots' ability to fly, train, operate, and stay ready. That alone makes it a national security issue worth looking at. We don't know. We don't have the answers about what these phenomena are. Otherwise, I guess we'd have a catchier name for it. Unexplained, unidentified aerial phenomena doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it's an honest assessment of what we think about this problem set. And so we'll see where it goes.
Okay, and then on Trevor Reed, has the administration on any level communicated with Russia about Trevor Reed?
Since he was injured, I know of no communications with Russian officials since the reports of his injury.
I asked because Secretary Blinken echoed what we heard from Karine yesterday, which is that, the administration believes that Trevor's case and what he did should be a separate case from the negotiations to bring Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich home. But my question is, how can the administration say that so confidently if you haven't even heard from the Russians about it?
Oh, I think the Russians have heard from us plenty. No, let me finish. I think they've heard plenty from us about where we stand on Americans fighting in Ukraine. I mean, you don't have to, even the most casual observer sitting in Moscow could take 2 seconds online and see how vociferously and strongly we have not only not encouraged Americans to go fight in Ukraine, but actively and energetically urged them not to. And so I won't speak for Mr. Reed. He can speak for himself and the decisions he made. But I can assure you and anybody in Moscow can look at what we've said and be equally assured that he went of his own accord. Nothing has changed. And Karine, I think, did this very well with you yesterday, talking about the risks that Americans might take if they go to Ukraine. They should not go. This is not the time for Americans to be in Ukraine. As for Americans that are being wrongfully detained in Russia,
they like talking about everything other than what's happening here. That drives me crazy. It's why I can't stand listening to Kirby. They always want to talk about what's happening overseas, but they don't ever want to talk about what's happening here.
That Mr. Reed was in Ukraine at our urging or encouragement, or that his decision to go there should be connected in any way to what we're trying to do to get those 2 wrongfully detained Americans home.
And you honestly believe that the Russians won't hold this against the U.S. as the U.S. tries to get the other 2 men out?
Man, I tell you, if I could get inside the head of Russian officials and know what they were going to decide and do, I probably would be in a very different place. I don't know. I can't possibly begin to predict what they'll think or say. But if by some infinitesimal small degree there's anybody in Moscow that thinks that we've changed our policy about Americans fighting in Ukraine, I urge them to listen to this press conference and read everything we've been saying for the last 16 months. Now is not the time for Americans to be in Ukraine, and we had nothing to do with Mr. Reed being there.
Just come up here, Jen.
Thank you, Colleen. Hi, John. I have two questions in Russia and North Korea and South Korea. The Russian defense minister was invited to North Korea for the 70th anniversary of Armistice Agreement. And it is known that the Russian defense minister will discuss importing weapons from North Korea. What do you think about the direct arms deal with North Korea by Russian defense minister about this, and not the Wagner groups? Can you comment on this?
I certainly can't confirm the report that you just laid out there. That said, it's been no secret, and we've talked about it many times, that Mr. Putin is reaching out to other countries for help and support in fighting his war in Ukraine, and that includes, we know, some outreach to the DPRK. It's, I think, a testament of the fact that Mr. Putin knows he's having his own defense procurement problems, his own inventory problems, that his military remains on the back foot, and he's trying to shore that up. Nobody should be helping Mr. Putin kill more Ukrainians. But the fact that he's reaching out to North Korea, or could be additionally, that wouldn't come as a surprise to anybody.
Do you think that this will be used in the war in Ukraine?
I couldn't begin to confirm that. I don't know.
We got to keep going. Go ahead, Francesca.
Over here. Thanks, John. In the Department of Justice's statement on the Biden administration lawsuit against the state of Texas, it said, quote, "The presence of the floating barrier has prompted diplomatic protests by Mexico and risks damaging U.S. foreign policy," end quote. Liz Sherwood Randall and a group of Biden administration officials were in Mexico this week. Did the Mexican government raise the issue of the floating barriers? And does the White House believe that the floating barriers hurt U.S. diplomatic efforts?
There was a delegation in Mexico largely to look at issues surrounding fentanyl. I don't know if the issue of the barriers came up. That wasn't the purpose of Liz Sherwood Randall's trip down there. It was really to talk about the counter-narcotics efforts, specifically around fentanyl. And I would refer you to the DOJ on more details on that.
Do you believe that it hurts U.S. foreign policy?
Well, it's certainly not helping, but I can't tell you that there's been a direct impact on our diplomatic relations with Mexico. They're very good, they're very strong, and we have a lot of mutual shared concerns, including, as I said, fentanyl, and certainly issues about immigration, and we're working closely with Mexican authorities on that.
And on another topic quickly on Ukraine, do you believe that the counteroffensive is moving too slowly?
President Zelensky himself has said that that it's not progressing as fast as he would like, and they're not moving as far every day as they would like. The United States is not going to take a position on that. We're not going to armchair quarterback this Ukrainian military operation. They should be able to be the ones, and only the ones, to speak to progress against plan. And again, they've already acknowledged that they're not going as fast as they would like. That said, they are moving. It's not a stalemate. They're not just frozen. The Ukrainians are moving. And what we're going to do is make sure, and you saw this just yesterday, I think Karine announced another package of support. We're going to make sure that they have the kinds of tools and capabilities they need to stay on the move, that we're giving them the relevant kinds of tools they need to continue to make progress in their counteroffensive, and to the degree it can be better progress that they're more content with, then that's all to the good.
Go ahead, Darla.
Thank you. Back on Trevor Reed, to what extent was the U.S. government aware of his plans to go to Ukraine and take up arms against
I'm not aware
Russia?
that we had any.
Did he give any advance notice to anyone at
I'm
the White
certainly
House?
not aware. I'm certainly not aware of any, nor would we expect that. I mean, other Americans have fought in Ukraine, unfortunately, and they don't have to report their departure or their whereabouts to the United States government. I'm aware of no information that we had. That said, we made it very clear when the war started, don't go.
And then one question on the Prime Minister's visit tomorrow. After she was elected, President Biden had warned of the spread of authoritarianism and far-right populism, given her political
What the hell?
Has his view of the Prime Minister changed at all? Because
I'm gonna grab some more coffee. I'll be right back.
He has a good relationship with Prime Minister Meloni, and he has enjoyed working with her, as I detailed in the opening comments, across a range of issues and a range of venues. And they have spoken several times outside of those venues. They get along quite well, particularly on issues of foreign policy. And again, the president's looking forward to this visit.
I wanted to ask also about the visit with the Prime Minister tomorrow. Does the President plan to bring up issues of LGBTQ rights in Italy? That's been something that her party has been clamping down on in the past couple months.
So just a couple of, I'm not going to get ahead of the discussion that hadn't happened yet. We'll give you a full readout when the meeting is over. But President Biden's foreign policy really is rooted in human rights. And we approach our engagement with countries around the world from that perspective: respect for human rights, civil rights, freedom of expression, and equality. And we're never shy about stating that, either publicly or privately, and we'll continue to do that.
Do that.
Good, Alex.
Thank you. Admiral, you had a question about the counteroffensive a little bit back. Let's say there is not much more progress by the time kind of the late summer rains start, and then, you know, the cold obviously comes pretty early in that part of the of Eastern Europe. I mean, is there a sense then that they need to negotiate before this thing drags on into 24? I mean, when does diplomacy kick in?
When does what kick in? That's going to be up to President Zelensky. He gets to determine if and when he's ready to sit down and negotiate. Right now, his country's still under attack. He still has tens of thousands of Russian troops on his soil, dug in, deeply entrenched, protected by minefields on ground that doesn't belong to them. And he has every right to want to reclaim his territorial integrity and his country's sovereignty. But only President Zelensky is going to be able to determine that. Now, hang on a second now. He's put forward a 10-point peace formula that we are working with him and his government to help actualize. Because we believe that for any diplomacy to work, it's got to start, the foundation has to be President Zelensky's view of what a just peace looks like. So he's laid that out with 10 points. We're helping him actualize that. So to some degree, the work of diplomacy, the pre-work of diplomacy has begun. It's begun months ago. And in fact, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, spoke to Mr. Yermak, his equivalent in the Ukrainian government, just today. And this was one of the topics that they discussed, was this idea of a just peace and how to actualize it.
But Zelensky's, he has said he needs F-16s, ATACMS, more heavy armor to make progress, especially because the defensive positions are so heavily mined and fortified. I mean, isn't there kind of a disconnect then? If you want them to win, should they not have what they say they need?
They do have what they need. We have provided the Ukrainians everything they asked for in the months leading up to the counteroffensive and continuing right through it. Again, Corinne just walked you guys through a whole big old package yesterday. And all the stuff that's in that package is stuff that's relevant to the fight that they're in this counteroffensive. But this notion that they didn't get everything they needed before the counteroffensive, or that a shortage of capabilities is what's causing delay is not true. They got everything they asked for and continue to get everything they asked for. Now, I recognize they always, and you can't blame them for wanting more. And we've talked about F-16s. The training will begin sometime soon, and hopefully thereafter followed by actual aircraft. But they've got tanks, they've got artillery, they've got HIMARS, and we're going to continue to work with them every single day about trying to fulfill their needs as best we can.
Okay. Oh, you have a last question.
Thank you, Corinne. Admiral, good afternoon. Do you know if the administration has seen the images of the bombed-out Transfiguration Cathedral in Ukraine? A few days ago it happened, this big, beautiful cathedral bombed out. Some debate over whether it was Russian missiles or falling Ukraine debris, but have you seen those images?
I have not.
And then finally, any update on the Tuberville situation, on the hold? Is the administration planning on meeting with him? What's the situation?
Secretary of Defense Austin has spoken a couple of times in just the last couple of weeks with Senator Tuberville. He maintains his hold. And now we're up to over 300 nominations that are being held, and it's having a real effect on military families, spouses who are not able to take jobs in the next location because they can't set up a move. That's not hypothetical, that's actually happening. Children who are having to be disenrolled from schools that they were supposed to start in the fall because they can't execute the move to get there. They can't make it in time for the school sessions to start. That's not hypothetical, that's happening. You've got senior officers who are being asked to delay their retirements. They're well-earned retirements, speaking as a retiree, and they're not able to do that, or they're willing to delay that to stay in the military a little longer while this very dangerous hold persists. And some will inevitably start voting with their feet, and they just won't be able to do that for a variety of reasons, and we're going to lose that talent because they aren't willing as a family to stay behind.
One of Tuberville's contentions is that taxpayer dollars should not be funding travel-related expenses for abortion for military members. You say what?
The President and the Secretary of Defense say that it should be. I talked about this the other day, so I won't go through it all again. But our service members don't get to decide where they get stationed. That's why you call them orders. You go where you're told to go. You go where the duty demands. And most of our service members serving in states across the country aren't residents of those states. But they're also not going to violate state laws. If you get stationed in a place like Alabama, you're going to obey Alabama laws. But if you're a service member and you deserve, as a service member, appropriate health care, including reproductive health care, the military has an obligation to make sure you get that health care. And for those who say that this is some sort of political issue and it's not readiness, but it's readiness. A healthy force is a ready force. And a woman service member or a woman family member has every right to expect that when they sign up to serve in the military, they're going to get the health care that they deserve. And so the military has put in place a policy, not one that Secretary Austin wanted to have to put in place, but these state laws are forcing him to put in place to allow female service members and their and women family members that need reproductive care, can't get it where they're stationed, to have the time off and some travel allowance to go take care of their own health. It's a covenant that you make with the military when you sign up, and it's a covenant that the military makes with you when you sign up. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank God that part's over.
Okay. All right, Darlene, what you got?
Thank you. Have you seen the president since Hunter Biden showed up in federal court, since the deal fell apart? Did he have any reaction that he has agreed to allow you to share with us?
So I'll tell you this.
That's very informative. Thank you, KJP.
The president and the first lady love their son, and they support him as he's rebuilding his life and trying to move forward. I have not spoken to the president today. He has been busy continuing to work on behalf of the American people, as he does every day with internal meetings, and so I will leave it there.
Is the White House any closer to figuring out when the president will make his promised visit to Africa this year?
I don't have a visit to preview at this time, but as you know, the president met with African leaders at the end of last year. It was incredibly productive, and he promised to visit the continent of Africa this year. Just don't have anything to lay out. As you know, the First Lady has traveled to the continent, so has the Vice President, and so we have kept our commitment in continuing to grow and develop that relationship with countries in Africa.
Last question.
Sure.
I wanted to follow up on your comments yesterday about Commander. You shared a statement that said the Bidens have been working with Secret Service and the resident staff on unleashing protocols. You talked about how the Secret Service has treated these biting incidents as workplace incidents. The statement went on to say that the President and First Lady are grateful to the Secret Service and the staff for keeping the families safe. But what we didn't hear yesterday was any statement of contrition or an apology, or that they're mortified or regret that Commander has been behaving like this. So
look,
would you like to update the statement?
Look, the statement came from my colleague that I was reiterating over at the First Lady's office. I would certainly refer you to the statement again. Look, the President and the First Lady continues to be incredibly grateful to the Secret Service and the executive resident staff. That continues to be the case. We are working through this to make the situation even better. I don't have anything else to add. As I mentioned yesterday at the top, being here on this complex, this White House complex, is incredibly unique and can be stressful situations for family pets, and we are working. We're certainly working through this particular situation with the Secret Service to make this better.
Hi, Karina. Earlier this week, you said the president was never in business with his son, but can you say specifically that the president did not have discussions of any kind with Hunter about his business dealings?
I appreciate the question. I've been asked this question multiple times in different variations in different ways. As you mentioned, I was asked this question multiple times on Monday. Nothing has changed. I don't have anything to add to what I stated on Monday.
Can you give us a preview of the president's briefing on heat?
I gave you a little bit of preview. He's going to be announcing some actions tomorrow. The extreme weather, as you all know, has been a difficult time for families and Americans across the country, especially out west. And so you're going to hear from the president about this. Let's not forget climate change. Climate change is real. That's why the president has taken some historic actions to deal with this issue, to deal with climate change, a crisis that he called when he first walked into this administration. And let's not forget, the Inflation Reduction Act is one of those laws that is giving or going to give the most resources to deal with climate change. The president is very proud of that, and you'll hear directly from him on this issue tomorrow.
Thanks, Reed. Have the president and his attorneys been in touch with Hunter's legal team today, and have they been keeping tabs on the proceedings?
Look, I don't have anything to share. I would refer you to, on this particular issue, I would refer you to Hunter's representative. I would refer you to the Department of Justice. I don't have anything to share beyond on what I shared at the top of this briefing.
It's extremely rare in such a high-profile case for a plea deal to fall apart like this. Does the president believe that the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors in this case, have acted appropriately and competently?
As you know, Jeremy, this was an independent investigation that was overseen by the Department of Justice. As we've been very clear, they are independent. We give them the space to do their work. We believe in the rule of law. I just don't have anything else to share on this. I would refer you to the Department of Justice. Again, this was done independently, and I would also refer you to Hunter's representatives.
On Senator Tuberville and his continued hold on these military promotions, he floated a potential way to move the nominations more quickly by saying that he'd be open to limiting the debate time on each individual nominee. Does the president believe that it's time to start moving some of these military nominations individually and voting on them individually through the Senate?
Look, Jeremy, I understand the question, but this is something that one senator is holding up. One senator, one Republican senator. And it shouldn't be done this way. It shouldn't be done this way. I think the Admiral did a really good job laying out what this means for our military families, our military service members. They don't deserve to be treated this way. When we talk about this particular legislation, not just the legislation, but as we move forward with these types of nominations, they should be done in a bipartisan way. And so it's unfortunate that this Senator Tuberville, is treating this as a political stunt He has to answer to military families, and he has to answer to military members who do everything that they can to protect us. And he's putting them in harm's way. And so I get the question, but this is truly, truly on Senator Tuberville here.
Does there ever come a point, though, where, especially as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is set to retire, you need to fill that position where it's maybe worth, especially for the most senior positions that really put national security at risk, to start moving some of these individuals?
Jerry, we shouldn't be in this situation. I get it. I hear what you're saying, but we should not be in this situation. Senator Tuberville should not be putting our military in this situation, not be using political ploys or political stunts to put our military in this situation, to put not just the military, but our national security for Americans across this country. And so I get it. I get that there are potential other pathways to get there, but we shouldn't be here. We just should not be here. And what he is doing is dangerous, and it's insulting. Okay, Risha.
President Biden has spent most of his political career working on gun laws, on gun reform. Does he believe that someone who is charged with possessing a firearm illegally should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law?
So here, I'm going to be, I think I know where this question is going, and I'm...
Well, she pretty much said it.
As it relates to the case...
Get KJP a map.
I'm just going to not speak to that. It is an independent matter. This is up for the Department of Justice. Even with the question that you're asking me, it's one of those legal criminal matters. It's up to that process, that legal process. I'm just not going to speak to it here.
But again, the president, when he was a senator, crafted gun legislation. As president, he talks often about the need to get illegal firearms off of our streets. So when someone possesses one illegally, what does the president believe should happen to them?
The president has been very clear. You just laid out where his position has been, what his policies have been, what he was able to pass into law. I'm going to be very mindful here. I'm going to be very careful because I see where this question is going, and I'm just going to refer you, as this has been an independent investigation. It's overseen by the Department of Justice. I'm going to let them speak to this as they are moving forward.
Thank you, Penny.
I was just talking about that. That's hilarious.
Other than his daily presidential briefings. So can you share with us what he's up to, who he's speaking with?
Yes, absolutely. So the president participated in an interview with Jay Shetty, who you all may know, to discuss the administration's effort to tackle the mental health crisis that affects millions of Americans. As you know, the president just yesterday announced a new rule to make sure that mental health is dealt with in parity, or that mental health is indeed health. You heard him say that directly yesterday. Jay Shetty's podcast, On Purpose, is the #1 health and wellness podcast with an average of 21 million downloads each month. So just so that you all have this, the interview will post on Monday, and he, of course, has internal meetings. He's had that throughout the day, and later today he's going to be delivering a toast at a gathering to just say goodbye and thank you to Louisa Terrell. As you all know, she will be leaving her position as the director of OLA, and so we will all be toasting her later today.
And then can you give us an update when it comes to East Palestine? The president has said that he would go. He has not yet. And also, Governor Mike DeWine asked the president to issue a major disaster declaration a few weeks ago. Is that something the president is going to do? And if so, when?
So on your first question, the president intends to go. Don't have a time or a date to preview at this time. I have to look into the Governor DeWine's request. I have to check in with the team and I would also refer you to FEMA. I just don't have anything to share on that piece. Let me try and go around here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Moments ago, you said that nothing has changed when you were asked about the president's previous remarks on his son's business dealings, but the language has in fact changed. So I just want to clear this up once and for all. The president has previously said that he has never discussed overseas business dealings with his son, but the White House now says that the president has never been in business with his son. So why the updated language? Which statement is true? Or is this semantics and they're both true?
As I stated on Monday, when I was asked this question multiple times, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed on this. Nothing has changed on this. And so you could ask me a million different ways. on this question, nothing has changed.
The only reason I ask is because the White House and the president's circle, that language does seem to be somewhat different. I didn't know if there was any distinction there. I wanted to ask, though, about Elizabeth Naftali. She's made more than a dozen visits here to the White House and met with some of the president's most senior advisors. Can you tell us a little bit more about those visits, why she was here?
I would have to look into that. I've not been tracking these visits that you're mentioning to me.
Thank you, Corinne.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. I'm trying to go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the Methane Summit today at the White House. Can you just sort of explain who is sort of on this task force that's being established, sort of what the next steps are, who was involved, I guess, in the summit today?
So, as you know, the Methane Summit happened earlier today. It is something that, as it's related to climate, certainly to climate change, this is something that the president certainly is committed to, and you'll hear from him more tomorrow as he talks about the excessive heat that we've seen. But just to give you a little bit of the download here, some details. It was the first ever White House Methane Summit. The event was brought together federal, state, and local leaders to discuss the need to reduce methane emissions to protect public health and create thousands of good-paying union jobs. The summit spotlighting cutting-edge detection technologies and how state and tribal governments are responding to dangerous emissions events. The reasons why we're doing it now is because millions of Americans are being impacted, as I just mentioned, from extreme heat. You'll hear more from the president tomorrow, and so it is important, and we think that the conversation is incredibly timely, and so we were glad to have it here at the White House.
Did the president take part in the summit at all?
No, the president did not take part of the summit. I just laid out what his day looked like. He did an interview to talk about mental health because it's part of the unity agenda that the president has been talking about for over a year now, and wanted to make sure that he communicated directly to millions of Americans. 21 million of Americans in particular listen to this podcast, and I mentioned as well he had some internal meetings with some senior members of this team. Okay.
I wanted to know if you had any updates on if President Biden is willing to declare a climate emergency. There's been more push from progressive lawmakers and activists for him to do that.
So I don't have anything new to share there. As you know, the president has the most aggressive and ambitious climate agenda since day one, as I mentioned at the top, as he's going to talk about.
She was having a moment there.
And in the Inflation Reduction Act is certainly an example of how seriously the president has taken this, and he's going to continue to take action. You're going to continue to hear from him on this issue. I just don't have anything to share on climate emergency. I just don't have any additional actions to preview at this time. But look, I think if you look at the president's actions over this past 2 years, he's taken more action, has been more aggressive on dealing with climate change than any other president. The Inflation Reduction Act is going to make a difference as we're trying to deal with this climate crisis. And so he has an ambitious agenda to deal with climate change, and he's going to continue to move forward with that agenda.
Thanks, Corinne. A group of automakers, including GM, are forming a new EV charging company to challenge Tesla. I'm just curious if the White House has any reaction to that, or if you played any part in helping them get that launched.
Are you talking about the 7 companies that are? Yeah. So look, and you've heard me and others talk about this. That's Bidenomics. Bidenomics is working and is in action, and because of this president's policies, you have these 7 major automakers coming together to install, I think, 30,000 high-powered EV charging stations, and that's progress. That's going to help middle-class families. The president's Investing in America agenda. This is part of that. This is part of Bidenomics, as you hear us talk about. It's creating new union jobs for installation and maintenance. So this is an important step forward as we talk about how to deal with this climate crisis.
Any antitrust concerns about multiple companies working together in that fashion?
Look, I don't have any concerns to lay out for you today, but we think this is an important step forward as we're dealing with this issue, as we're also talking about creating jobs, as we're building the economy. Again, this is Bidenomics in action. Go ahead, Francesca.
Thanks, Corinne. Has any progress been made since we last talked about this on bringing home Travis King from North Korea?
I don't have anything new to share than what I shared yesterday during the briefing. Look, as you know, we have the UN, we have the DoD, we have the State Department here, us here as well at the White House are all engaging together on this. Just don't have any more information to share. We are still trying to gather all the facts on this, and our concern is the well-being of the private. I just don't have anything further to share on this.
And the Federal Reserve has just announced an interest rate hike by a quarter point, which brings it to the highest level in 22 years. Does the White House have comment on that?
As you know, we see the Federal Reserve as being independent. We give them the space to make sure that they are able to make monetary decision. It is up to them to make that decision. I'm just not going to comment about the decision today. Okay.
Regarding the federal judge in California blocking the administration's asylum rules, as of right now, what is the backup plan should this ruling not be stayed by the Ninth Circuit of the Supreme Court?
So look, right now, the way that we see the ruling is nothing has changed. We think that they made a mistake, but nothing has changed. We continue to move forward with our plan. The Department of Justice has responded to this, so I certainly will refer to them, but nothing has changed. We're going to move forward. Let's not forget the action, the plan that the President has put forward has actually shown a lower number in migrants, illegal migration into this country than we've seen in the last 2 years. So the plan the President's put forward is working, and that is important. Again, nothing has changed in this. We're going to see. I believe we're going to see this the stay that we're for the next 14 days.
Holy shit, she talks like a toddler. Like she doesn't even know what she's trying to get out of her face. Just shut the hell up and run away already. We already know it's where it's going.
Just the other day, a U.S. drone was damaged by a Russian military jet over Syria. How does the U.S. classify that particular incident? Has there been any outreach by U.S. officials to their Russian counterparts about this, about rules of engagement going forward?
So a couple of things. We've seen the reports, the early reports of a second Russian fighter aircraft this week flying dangerously close to our drone on a defeat ISIS mission. So I would reiterate that Russia's close approach to and deployment of flares over U.S. drones during a routine mission against ISIS targets violates established protocols and international norms. So we remain focused on the mission to defeat ISIS as evidence by our recent strike against an ISIS leader in Syria this month. And so we are certainly aware of the initial reports, don't have anything further to share on that piece.
And separately, not wanting you to comment on the Fed decision, but rather to comment on the White House's view as it relates to inflation. Do you see inflation coming down from the level that it is right now, around 3%, even further by the end of this year?
So I'm not going to get into predictions or hypotheticals from here. What I can say is that the President has been very committed to making sure that we lower costs for the American people. We have seen from other data points, as you know, that we've seen inflation come down by 2/3 in the past 12 months. That's important. And a lot of that is because of...
Where did that happen at? That didn't happen here in America. She must be talking about the blue and yellow country.
We see inflation easing. We see creating jobs, more than 13 million jobs. That's because of the work that this president has done. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. I'm going to let the experts detect or try to figure out what that inflation looks like moving forward. What we're going to focus on is doing everything that we can to lower costs for the American family.
You see inflation easing in the response that you just gave. Is that based upon a forecast coming from the president's economic advisors?
That's based on the facts. That's based on the data that we have seen. CPI, PPI, all the data that we've seen the past couple of months. That's where we're getting that, 2/3. That's important. Inflation has fallen for 12 months in a row. 12 months in a row. And that's because of the work that this administration has done. And so, look, I'm not going to get, again, into forecast here. That is something for the experts to do. But I can speak to the work that this president has done and will continue to do. When it comes to his economic plan, the number one thing that he talks about is lowering costs for the American people. And he'll continue to do that. Thanks. See you tomorrow, guys.
Run. Yep. Everybody in all the chats are saying she looks run down, and it must be from all the lying. I've seen multiple people say that on all the chats across the board. All right, we're gonna move forward here. first, I think we're going to start with... Once again, we're going to be covering I want to show you guys the new shirts I made yesterday with the Screaming Goat. Get these beats on. Then we're going to cover a video titled Congress Holds Hearing on UFOs After Whistleblowers Claim Government Kept Information Secret. We're not going to watch the whole 2.5 hour whatever. There's just a small section that I watched that seems to be a big deal. I see it circulating all over the internet and stuff. First, gotta get KJP's voice out of my head. But we're going to cover a small section of that. It's just a few minutes long. Then we're going to be covering a video titled Turned Away, GOP Rep Says UFO Investigation Reveals Real Problem. They're going to be discussing some of the things that were talked about during the hearing. And then we'll be wrapping up with a video titled Judge in Hunter Biden Case Was Very Disturbed by This, talking about him being in court today. I guess he just pled not guilty from what I was reading in the chat. But I guess they're not going to let him just slide. That's what they're trying to make it look like. I still think they're going to let him slide. I think he's going to get away with all this stuff. But first, we're going to show these shirts off. Everybody on all the free speech platforms, for the most part, have this new design as an emoji that they can use in the chat. Everybody's doing their screaming goats right now. This is a new shirt we got out. New design. We had a hooligan actually make this. They offered to make it, and they did a great job, I think. It's got the Jeff Mac logo on the bottom. The little red line under the goat says Hooligan Nation. It's got the hooligan badge. These are available right now. I will drop the link to you guys if you want to go check them out. We have shirts, hoodies, stickers, all kinds of stuff, and more. So definitely go check all that stuff out. I'm dropping the link in the chat right now. It should bring you right to the shirt. It's just written something in the chat. Also, if you guys would like to support the live, go check out the description. We have all of the donation links, membership links, all that kind of stuff. The wish list. All that stuff can be found in the description of all the chats if you guys would like to show support. Also, go join Gilded. You can find that link. If it's not in the description, it's on the link tree. Everything is on the link tree. But for you guys that don't want to dig in the link tree, I put all the links in the description. Oh, and for all you people that were pissed off yesterday about the circumcision talk, those protesters were out there again today. I didn't get a picture of it, but they were out there again today. I didn't realize that was such a touchy topic until I brought up the protesters yesterday, and people were choosing sides. That was funny. So we're going to cover this small portion of this live hearing. It's not live now, obviously, but it was live earlier. Also, I didn't have power until like 5 minutes before we had to go live because we have storms going on here. They're supposed to kick back up in an hour. So this probably won't be a long live today. It's already been long with KJP and Hot Dog Fingers up there flapping their lips. My goodness. Alright, gotta find this spot on here. So we're only gonna cover a little bit of it. Come on, man. They edited the video, so now I have to re-find it. It was like 2.5 hours. I planned on covering it today, but I didn't have internet. It's hard to do that without the internet. I hate that. I always pull these links and then they edit the video and then the timelines don't match anymore. I'll find it though. I'll find it. Here we go. I'm getting it figured out. Don't you worry. Alright. So this is the section I came across. I kind of got everything settled as much as I could, waiting for the internet to come on. Started watching this nonsense so I would know what's happening. Came across this little portion, so let's get it started.
And good morning to our witnesses who are testifying today. I want to thank each of you for being here to discuss a topic of grave importance to our national security. Earlier this year, a Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the coast of my home state of South Carolina. Since the Roswell incident in 1947, many Americans have wondered about the dangers of unknown objects crisscrossing our skies, whether these are UAPs or weather phenomena, advanced technology from American allied or enemy forces, or something more out of this world. So my first question, I have several questions, and if we can just be quick on these first two, I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll get to each of you individually. The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right. And then do you believe there's an active disinformation campaign within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves. What percentage of UAP sightings, in your belief, go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file, never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government, of the 5% that are reported?
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage, so.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft,
I think the nervous laughing is weird.
The pilots who piloted this craft.
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
Well, that's something. That's what the whole internet and I guess the White House is talking about. There's like no other news. It's all Hunter Biden and UFOs. It's like there's just nothing else going on. Found some non-humans, some crashed UFOs. Just another day. It's a whole bunch of look over here, don't look over there. I don't know if they're trying to cover up Hunter Biden being in court today and it's just not effective, or if both of those are a distraction for something else that's going on that they're not providing us the information on. Most people are using VPNs right now to look up Russian news and stuff like that to compare it to our news to see the changes that are made with all the distractions that they tell us. Just reading through the chat really quick and we're going to be moving forward. Miss Jamie, you think they're fallen angels? I've heard all kinds of stuff. I've heard and read that some people think it's angels, some people think it's us from the future, some people think it's like spirits, some people think it's extraterrestrials, other people think it's China, some people think it's not real at all. They think it's our government. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I know they only use it when they want us to look away, have us looking in the sky instead of paying attention to what's going on around us. So we're going to cover this next video. It's also not very long. Titled, Turned Away, GOP Rep Says UFO Investigation Reveals a Real Problem. This is them discussing in reaction to that whole hearing that was going on for 2.5 hours. There definitely wasn't that many people interested in it because even Right Side Broadcasting only had like 3,000 views and they got like 5 million subscribers, so it's crazy sauce. I think we're being distracted from something, but I'm not sure what.
Military veterans who say they have firsthand accounts of UFOs will testify this morning amid questions over whether the government is hiding extraterrestrial information from the public. Air Force officer David Grush is one of the witnesses. He says he became a whistleblower following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intel community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. UAPs are what you and I refer to as UFOs. Congressman Tim Burchett is going to be in the hearing today and joins us now. Congressman, let us start with what I call the existential question. By the end of today's hearing, will we know if we are alone in this universe?
Well, that's a good question. What the committee won't be, we're not going to bring in a UFO or a little saucer or a little green man. What we've got is 3 patriotic Americans who have come forth at great risk of their own, and their credentials are beyond reproach. I think we will. I think these gentlemen will lay out a pretty good case for that. You know, there's a lot of video that's out right now, the Tic Tac video, which is, it's not TikTok, it's Tic Tac like the candy. One of the gentlemen that was involved in the filming of that will be there. And actually,
You sound like Forrest Gump when he said that.
The UFOs and those things. You know, the funny thing is that the Pentagon says they don't exist, yet, you know, I proposed legislation and the FAA reauthorization that just says if pilots, commercial pilots, have a sighting, that they make a report to the FAA, that it would be made to Congress. Well, that was blocked. That bill was blocked by the allegedly the intelligence community, whoever that is. You know, I don't know if that's military intelligence, but that's sort of like congressional ethics. I really don't think it exists very much.
So why do you think that is, and what other questions do you want answered today?
I think there's a great deal of arrogance. Why aren't they releasing the Kennedy files on the assassination? It's 60 years ago. You know, no one's even alive. There's an arrogance, and also there's a monetary gain in this thing. Imagine if we had some craft that we're seeing, that you saw the pictures of, has no heat signature, can travel at incredible speeds that we're not capable of, can make turns and things like that. Yet, what would that do to our energy sector? You know, the Pentagon would go out of business because we wouldn't need to be in all these worthless wars overseas over oil. We could heat our houses in the winter and cool them in the summer. it would just be incredible. And yet those things seem to be getting suppressed. Yet they claim they don't exist, but yet there they are, and they spend a whole heck of a lot of time fighting it. You know, the Pentagon loses over $1 billion a year in their audits, and yet I seem to be the only one raising that issue. And, you know, the Pentagon is right now basically a bunch of war pimps. That's what they're pushing. They push war. Their business is war, and it's good. And now they're trying to get additional dollars to study this issue. They don't need any more dollars. We just need transparency. Just open up the files, let the American public decide, and dadgummit, we'll figure it out ourselves. We don't need their arrogance overseeing us.
Yeah, that seems to be the key thing with all of this, transparency. Like, we pay the government our taxpayer dollars. They work for us. I understand there could be some national security reasons why we can't give all the information. But to your point, give us something. 10 more seconds to you to take us home, Congressman.
Yes, sir. Well, Representative Luna, myself, and Representative Gates went down to Florida, Eglin. We're told we were going to get to view some things, talk to some pilots. We were basically turned away. The military is running this show. When the military tells Congress what to do, we've got a real problem in this country, and we've got a real problem. We're over the target. Let's get to the bottom of it. Today is just the start of it. It's not the ending. It won't be any final thing. But I believe we're going to start having some field hearings where we won't have this objection from the big boys.
We will be watching. Literally all of America, all of the world will be watching to find out what you guys come up with today. We're watching. Congressman Tim Burchett, thank you.
I don't know. Like you said, today's not the last day. They'll keep using this to pull people's attention away in the future. I don't know. See, I don't look for it. I always tell you guys, like, I don't be swimming in the ocean because I don't want to die in the ocean. I try not to be in planes because I don't want to fall out of the sky. I don't want an alien touching my back door, so I'm not out there looking for aliens. So I don't know what it is. And could you imagine you got abducted and then molested by an alien and then you find out it's really just the government? And then you're like, wait a minute, why'd you have to do all that? You didn't even have to do that. I don't know. I don't want no part of that, so I don't look for it. But this is like all that's being talked about is the UFO stuff. So that's enough of the UFO stuff. We'll just the screaming goat will cleanse it. It'll make it all better. So we're gonna be wrapping things up talking about this last one. It's a video titled "Judge in Hunter Biden Case Was Very Disturbed by This." Just talking about details coming out about the case. Like I said a little bit ago, people in the chat were saying he just pled not guilty. We'll see what happens with all of this. I like that the reporter called it out today because I was talking about it the other day about how old man Walter is always talking about all this gun ban stuff, and then his crackhead smoking son is over here illegally purchasing firearms, disposing of firearms, throwing them away in a trash can or whatever happened, doing all this crazy illegal stuff with guns while his dad's trying to take guns away from the rest of us. I'm glad that the reporter actually asked that. I figured KJP wasn't going to say anything in response, but I'm probably going to cut that out and put out a short clip of that because it's true. That's a true story. We can't have guns, but crackhead Hunter can. All right, let's get her started.
All right, a Fox News alert. 10 o'clock this morning, Hunter Biden is set to appear in federal court where he is expected to plead guilty and finalize what many call a sweetheart plea deal on a couple of tax charges. But last night at the 11th hour, the judge threatened to sanction his legal team, accusing them of blocking key evidence. Quote, it appears that the caller misrepresented her identity and who she worked for in an attempt to improperly convince the clerk's office to remove the amicus materials from the docket. Hunter's defense team responding, we have no idea how the misunderstanding occurred, but our understanding is there was no misrepresentation. Our next guest has been following this case from the very beginning, Fox News contributor Miranda Devine. Miranda, of course, at the last minute, suddenly there's this accusation. Hey, somebody called in, told me to seal that up, and it sounds like it was all fishy.
Yes, Steve, I don't think anyone out there will be at all surprised that there's been some last-minute shenanigans in this case. It's very high stakes for Hunter Biden and for his father, Joe Biden. There's been a lot of shenanigans going into minimising any penalty for many years of tax, let's call them irregularities, alleged tax evasion. And now it's going to come to a head this morning. But last night, the judge was so disturbed by what she'd been told by her clerk had been done by Hunter Biden's lawyers that she threatened his lawyers that they might be sanctioned unless they came up with a good explanation.
Right.
Now, they did come up with an explanation. They said it was just, as you said, a misunderstanding, unfortunate, unintentional, between one of their lawyers and the clerk, their lawyers did not misrepresent herself as coming from the GOP lawyers. So the judge will have to sort out who's telling the truth and if it really was a misunderstanding. And maybe this would affect her rubber stamping that plea deal.
Right.
But it's a lot of pressure. It's Delaware. It's Joe Biden's home state. I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Sure. At the 11th hour as well, yesterday, the chairman, a Republican, Jason Smith, of the House Ways and Means Committee, submitted an amicus brief to the judge and said, hey, before you go ahead and rubber stamp this, take a look at what these whistleblowers said. And I understand that's some of the stuff that this call tried to seal so that the public couldn't see it. And apparently the caller said, yeah, there's tax stuff, there's Social Security stuff, and there's grand jury stuff. And that would seal it. However, it's all fishy. And thankfully, they're going to work it all out. Miranda, ultimately, though, this particular judge, who was appointed by Donald Trump, nominated by Donald Trump, do you think it's just going to be a rubber stamp? Don't you think she's going to ask a lot of questions? And there are a lot of people hoping that she reads what the whistleblowers said and says, you know what, can we go back and look at this a little more?
Yes, look, that's a 400-page something amicus brief that was filed by Jason Smith yesterday. And of course, the Hunter Biden team hate what the IRS whistleblowers say, which is that there was obstruction and slow walking to favour Hunter Biden and get him this sweetheart plea deal. And that's a lot for her to read and digest. There are 2 other amicus briefs, I believe, that have been sent in. So she may want to adjourn so she has some time to grapple with this information.
Of course, we'll have coverage starting at 10 o'clock this morning. Miranda, thank you very much for the pregame show.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I don't know. I still think he's going to get out of it. I think he's going to get out of it no matter what. What's up, Distracted? Really sorry to hear that. I'm hoping for a speedy recovery. That's rough stuff. I was just saying that the other day. There's a bunch of people on motorcycles out. I'd like to have a motorcycle, but the way people drive, I can't see. It's not safe. It's not safe. Not the way people drive here. I get fearful being in my Subaru. 10-man, and he pleads not guilty. Yeah, I don't think Hunter Biden's gonna get anything. He gets that special. He's got that Biden privilege. He's got that Biden privilege. Guess MJ. It should be in the bottom of the chat. Are you on the website or are you on the app? Just reading through the chat really quick. Raja, yeah, I agree. He should be in jail. Happy Freedom, Donna. Appreciate you being here. I'm going to try and upload more emojis. Coming up with more ideas. Also, I'm going to put those emojis for everybody that's got the membership over on Twitch. So you guys will have the new emojis and GIFs and all that stuff. I want to try and put it on Odyssey, but I don't think I have a way to do that yet. Oh, you got it figured out, Guess MJ? right. Well, everybody looks good. All right. So I'm going to drop the Linktree link. We're not going to go through the whole spiel deal, but I'm going to give you all the tools you need. If you'd like to show support, if anything, go join Gilded. Gilded is free. You'll get notifications every time we go live. All the hooligans are hanging out there all day, every day. Go join Gilded. And on your way looking for your Gilded, you have all the donation links, all the membership links, all the merch links. Oh yeah. Go get you one of these. Go get you one of these. You can get this at the merch store. I'm going to order one today too. It's got Jeff Mac Hooligans on the back, like most of the other merch. And then everything you see there on the screen, once again, right next to the Jeff Mac logo, it says Hooligan Nation in red. And then it's got the Hooligan badge right next to it. You can also find that on the Linktree. Just go to the merch store. Shirts, hoodies, stickers, canvases, all that stuff. We got all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely go check out all the merch and whatnot. I was going to see about live streaming to Gilded for people who have memberships on Gilded, but I think it might be too tedious of a task. Either way, that's all the coffee I had for you hooligans today. So definitely go take advantage of that Linktree link. But first, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we did the thing. I'm going to read through the chat really quick. Make sure everybody's doing good. We will be live later today, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for some gaming. If you want to come hang out and play Fallout New Vegas with us over on Jeff Mac Gaming, you can find that at the very bottom of the Linktree. Go subscribe over to that channel and whatnot. I think that's it. Well, what day is it? Is it Wednesday? It is Wednesday. Well, I'll see you hooligans tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for another Coffee with Hooligans. Appreciate all of you guys being here. Donna, yeah, go join Gilded. It's just like Discord, but better. It's better than Discord in almost every way. Plus, we put all those cool emojis over there also. What's up, Hillbilly at Heart? Happy freedom. The way the world is right now, aliens from another world might be welcomed. Be a welcome sight, yeah. I don't know. If aliens were going to present themselves to us, the government would tell us that they killed a state. They'd be like, no, they just got done wiping out Texas. We need to fight back. And that way we wouldn't side with them over the government. What's up, Lone Wolf? I don't know what's going on with Corinne. I don't know. I see her posting on Facebook and stuff, but I never see her live anymore. Hey, I appreciate you, Christy. Everybody with the screaming goats over on Rumble. I love those screaming goat emojis. The goat intensifies. On Gilded, everyone was saying it's a goat named Mac. That's the goat's name. Guess I'm Jay. Why Texas? Because it's huge. That's why. I didn't say they were going to actually do it. They're just going to tell us that they did it. And then everybody will be defensive. I won't side with the aliens. Alright, hooligans, I appreciate all of you guys. I'll see half of you over on the gaming channel later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll see the rest of you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for another Coffee with Hooligans. I appreciate all of you guys. Big shout out to everyone that made donations, joined the membership program, or purchased any merch. I really appreciate all of you, and I would not be able to do this without you. So thank you so much for all your support. I'll see you on the next live. Until then, stand tall, shine bright. That's a wrap.